Welcome to the Scottsdale Vibes podcast. I'm Alicia Haygood. As we grow in the city and as we grow as small businesses, I'm gravitated towards finding other entrepreneurs that are hugely successful, hearing their stories and helping each other to grow, and most importantly, bring them to you as well, because we can all learn from each other, use each other, and support one another here in the community. That's what it's all about to me. So I'm really excited to introduce you today to a friend of mine, James Patrick. James and I have done a couple media panels together. He has really helped me bring me into this media industry here in the Phoenix Valley and Scottsdale, introduced me to people. He's always been a big supporter of everything I've done. So I'm very excited to introduce you to him and reintroduce you to many of you because he, like I said, he's been in the business for a while. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'll have James Patrick with me. When it comes to protecting you, your family, and all your assets, you need to have someone that you can trust, and that's Jeremy Mueller of State Farm Insurance. Jeremy Mueller has lived in Scottsdale his whole life. How can anyone else know your needs more than someone who's been here and seen it all? Jeremy and his team are always ranked in the top % at State Farm. He cares, he's knowledgeable, and most importantly, he's always available. Don't believe me? Give him a call at 480-515-5223 or find him at jeremymueller.com. James Patrick is an award-winning photographer, best-selling author, business coach, and media specialist based right here in Phoenix, Arizona. He's the founder of Get Published Live, which is an international annual conference for entrepreneurs to earn media, as well as other publisher events as the Icon Redefined, a media network celebrating the modern entrepreneur, which includes digital platform, multiple print publications, and a top-charting podcast. James's mission is to create both art and opportunities for those he connects with. And when you want to find out more about James Patrick, go to jamespatrick.com and you can learn even more about his podcast and everything else. But first, let's get to know him right here on the Scottsdale Vibes podcast. So James, you started off as a photographer. I'm sure there was many other jobs because you are not a man of one trade, I have learned. I really want to hear about photography, the art, your eye behind the lens, and how that changed your life and really just kind of took off from there.
You know, I didn't really consider photography as a viable career path when I was in college because it's not like I knew a lot of photographers. So, you know, I went to college for journalism, and journalism led to photojournalism. But I was like, you know, I'm going to take the safe route outside of college. I'll apply my journalism degree and get a job in marketing. Marketing's safe. You know, we're always going to need marketing. But something was kind of itching beneath the surface. And I would spend all of my free time when I wasn't working my marketing job investing it into this side hustle of photography. And I realized all of a sudden all my evenings are consumed, and now all my weekends are consumed. And now I'm burning not only all my vacation days, but all my sick days so I could go work on my photography career. And that was at that moment where I was like, you know what? I need to make this shift and go full into photography, realizing that, well, worst case scenario, I'll just go back to marketing. I can do that.
Well, I mean, you say that, but like marketing it's based off of photography. It's a very visual way of getting your product, your brand, and yourself out there. So you were marketing in that whole sense. I'll tell you what, photojournalism was one of the hardest classes I took in my journalism career.
Me too.
I got ripped apart by my teacher, and he actually made me really mad. But at the end of that semester, I learned so much about the meaning of a picture, where it's placed, how it's printed, how it's shot. And when they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, it's really more than that because you don't understand how it interacts with your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, and all that. Talk to me about like that concept of marketing with a picture, because you do that in everything that you preach as a business coach, as a mentor, and your work.
So there's really, 2 points I want to make to this. First was I was really lucky when I was in college because my first jobs as a photographer was actually working more behind the desk as opposed to out working with the camera. I was still out as a staff photographer for a magazine and for a newspaper, but more so I was the photo editor, meaning I was assigning photographers to go work on various projects, then culling through all their images to select which images ended up in the newspaper, where they ended up in the newspaper, or, contrast it with the magazine. So I had to learn right away what images work in the marketplace, what makes an image viable, what makes an image tell a story, and then what images are not really good for what we're trying to communicate or the narrative that we're trying to piece together. So I was really fortunate that I had that background. Now, the other part of it that, you've kind of alluded to that I found is interesting is it doesn't matter what we choose to do with our time, whether it's sitting here on the microphone doing a podcast or, taking photos, or maybe I'm a writer, a content creator. We're in the business of communicating with others and creating a way to build trust, to build resonance, and to build connection
100%.
With our intended audience. So when I hear photographers talk about how they struggle with the business side of it, they struggle with the sales side of it, my response is, then you just don't understand what the business side is. And you don't understand what the sales side actually involves, because cultivating something worth seeing, worth noticing is the number one thing we do in what we're trying to create. So the marketing of what we're doing is just as important as the technical specs of the images that we're producing.
Let's talk about that word, marketing. I think it is very undervalued. There is a mixed interpretation of it. And as someone who's in sales and marketing myself, between the podcast and, Scottsdale City Lifestyle Magazine, it's constant and people don't understand it. I think some of that is the shift of what social media does for us, that we are a now generation. I say that, we expect instant results and instant gratification. That's not what marketing is. And you have to have marketing to brand yourself, your product, your business, whatever it is. What have you learned, and coach us on some of what is marketing for you?
I think really you could look at it from two different approaches. I see a lot of people, when they think about marketing, they're thinking about, how can I compete against others within my industry or within my space? And the first thought that comes to mind is, I have to compete on price or value. And that's a really dangerous position to put yourself in, because you're going to race to the bottom. And the problem with racing to the bottom is you might win that race, because there's always going to be someone who's willing to price a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower. And if that's your entire ecosystem of the industry that you're in, you're either going to price yourself out of business, or you're going to price yourself so low, you're going to get so much business that you won't be able to actually work the business, because you won't be paid a successful hourly rate. Okay. So that's one approach to it. The other approach to it, the one that I've put more energy into for myself and the brands that I oversee, is let's take price off the table and let's now instead build something that's different from what's in the marketplace already. And it's not quality. When you're talking to different entrepreneurs, say, well, what helps you and what you're creating stand out in the marketplace? Typically, they'll say things like, well, the quality of what I produce. A lot of people make really good quality. In fact, quality is a prerequisite. If you're not doing quality work, you're not really within an industry.
Okay.
So it can't be quality, because someone's always going to come out, and I never really consider myself the most creative photographer, the most technically sound photographer. But I can create something that people see as different in the marketplace, that people see as unique in the marketplace. So for years, at the start of my career, what I focused on that was different was the fact that I worked on the other side of the camera, meaning I was the one hiring photographers. So I know what images work. And instead of wasting your time taking a bunch of photos that might not work, I know what's going to work. In fact, I have a proven history of knowing what's going to work, because I worked on your side, the client side.
Yeah.
So as a photographer, I'm just going to take those photos. It'll be more efficient and more effective for you. And then I was able to build case studies that showed that. So what I did was I created a landscape where people were unable to compete with me in that field. All right. I then evolved it into marketing editorial features. If your goal is editorial features, well, I've shot more than 700 magazine covers in my career.
A couple for me, by the way. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my unique differentiator now. Now, if you're a client and magazine features mean nothing to you, you wouldn't even consider me.
Right.
Right. And that's okay. That's the thing, is I'm targeting the clients who that is important to them. So it's knowing what your unique differentiator is, what your unique selling position is that matters to the clients that you're trying to get in front of.
Let's break that down a little bit from a coaching perspective. How do you've come out with you're a published author, your newest book, The Legacy Planner, is a great way to break it down thought by thought, step by step. So let's kind of do that with this when you're thinking of your business. How do you figure out what's your special uniqueness? Because again, even like you just said, there's other photographers out there, James. There's other people that have done cover shoots. You're not one of a kind, but your uniqueness and your talents and your skill level, how do you emphasize that to someone to market you?
So one of the things that I found to be incredibly beneficial was we started to survey our clients every year. And at the end of every year, we'd put a survey out to our top clients, and we would ask questions like, what did we do that you felt was above and beyond? What could we have done better? And, you can learn a lot by asking people's open opinions. And one of the questions we asked was, if you were us, what would you do to market our products and services?
Interesting.
And that was an interesting question because it alluded us to things that we weren't even seeing as pieces on the board. So the fact that it was pointed out to us, oh, you have all these connections in the publishing industry, and you are already helping so many of your clients, land these features. Why don't you make that the forefront of what you're doing? That's why I'm hiring you. So we're actually just going directly to the client saying, what was it that got you to say yes to us and not to someone else? And I can make assumptions that it was something, but to hear it directly from the client themselves, this is what we thought was important. This is why we made that decision. Then we were able to incorporate that into what we're able to do. And I'll give you another example. I've been running a conference now. We're in our 10th year of our conference, Get Published Live. Now, for 8 of those 10 years, the conference ran under a different name. It was called Fitposium. And the focus of Fitposium was to help health and wellness entrepreneurs build, market, and profit from their brand in their industry. Now, after doing this for 8 years, we had built a reasonable success with it. We had a year with over 500 attendees, 50 plus speakers, 100 plus sponsors. That was great. It was fantastic. But as we are now coming out of the pandemic and events are coming back, all of a sudden it became much harder to compete as an event against a lot of other events that were touting essentially the same thing, which is we help you build, market, and profit from your business in the health and wellness industry.
Do you think that happened because like COVID, everything was able to go online, so there are more opportunities you felt like to build something at that point?
Yeah, tons more opportunities, tons more online courses, tons more virtual events, hybrid events. And then as we started to come back together, it's just like any market's going to get saturated.
Yeah.
And our market that we were in got saturated. So we had to look at it and be like, okay, we're not going to compete successfully if we're just competing on that we've been doing it longer. Okay. So
which is an accomplishment. So yeah.
Yeah. But ultimately it's like, am I going to go to this event that is able to draw 3,000 people versus 500 people? Like, we have to find an area that our competitors cannot compete with us in. Okay. And something that only we can do. So we looked at our entire event, and the thing that we did that no one else was doing is one of the things we did in our event was we connected our event attendees to media outlets. No other event was doing that. And we said, well, that's the unique thing. That's what makes us different. Instead of that being just a side note, let's make that the whole thing.
Nice.
Let's make the whole thing about how do you land and leverage earned media features. So we rebranded the event and relaunched it under its current name and brand, which is Get Published Live. And now when you're looking at events, you know what that event does. It's how you learn to land and leverage media features. And no other event is going to do that right now, right?
Right.
In 10 years, maybe that'll change. Okay. But what we're able to do is create a competitive environment where there's no one else doing what we do. And now it's very clear on how we stand out in the marketplace.
Well, I mean, and it's turned international at this point. You have people from different countries all over coming to you. So tell me how you even shifted into a more niche market of really that health and fitness and wellness kind of area that got you into this will be our main focus. Because again, that's another emphasis of you can do anything. Why this, and how did you kind of find that path?
I think there are a couple different ways that you can think about differentiation. The first thing that comes to mind is I'm going to differentiate who my clients are, and I'll get into why I chose the health and wellness space. Another way you can differentiate is I'm going to shift the services I'm providing.
Okay.
So I could look at that. I don't necessarily do this, but I could look at that and be like, well, instead of just photography, I do photography and some sort of graphic design element or branding element, and I could bring that in. Now I provide a different service than another photographer. A third way that you can differentiate yourself is to provide a different outcome. So when I say, when I work with my clients, I work with my clients to help them get published. That's providing a different outcome. So there's multiple ways you could think about when you're thinking about how do I differentiate myself or my business in the marketplace. So my first phase, like I mentioned, was to differentiate who I was marketing this towards. So this was circa 2008, and my photography business was tanking like most people's businesses were struggling during that time. Now, fortunately, at this time, I was still working my marketing job.
Okay.
So I just considered, photography was a fun hobby, right?
Right.
Maybe I'll do it here and there, but for the most part, I'm going to put my camera up on a shelf and I'll just focus on my photography career, put my head down and get serious and grow up. Couldn't do that. It was still kind of gnawing at me. So I says, well, I'll just do one thing. And I could just do one thing. And I had been reading in different business magazines about rising industries. And I was reading a lot about it wasn't necessarily fitness, quote unquote. It was sports and wellness was kind of like two industries that so many economists were predicting was going to boom and grow in the coming years. So I was like, well, I love working with athletes. Let me just do that. And maybe I'll just get a job once a month or twice a month. And that could just be the thing, is just doing kind of the sports portraiture action type work. Mm-hmm. And no one was really specializing in that, marketing that, building a focus around that. So when I says, that's all I'm going to do, and then that industry took off, which it did take off, well, I was at the forefront of that wave. Yeah. Okay. So that's what helped me build so much of that early speed and momentum, which was I'm going to focus down on something that is either successful right now or I'm predicting will be successful. And it was the latter. And then I was able to ride that as the industry grew. And then once that industry, health and wellness, turned into fitness, got saturated, then I pivoted into something else. So we kind of have to have our heads on a swivel as we're seeing things shift within any of our industries. Like, I'm a photographer. This industry changes every few years. When I got into this,
your technology alone and all of that, how it works. Yeah.
There's one right there. Like people were bitching that, well, when I got in, it was this switch from film to digital. Mm-hmm. And there were so many saying, you know what? I'm holding on to film. I'm not going to do digital. Well, what happened? Consumer demand wanted digital assets. So unless you made the change, you became irrelevant. Same thing happened with social media. Real clients will never find good service providers on social media. Well, what happened? Consumer demand dictated that people want to connect with others leveraging social outlets. So if you weren't on it, you became irrelevant.
Yeah.
Saw the same thing happen in 2008 as people were complaining, all these young people entering into the industry are lowering rates and they're driving the market down. It's hurting everyone. No. What is happening is consumers are demanding different deliverables and different assets from their service providers. And if you're not willing to adapt and be at the forefront of that, they're going to choose someone else who is. And we're seeing this, I'm almost becoming these curmudgeon-y people now because I'm so mad that my favorite types of cameras are not really being made anymore. And I was so mad because I broke my camera a couple of weeks ago and I had to buy a new camera. And I'm just like, I don't like this new camera. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm that guy now. I'm in that position. That's where I'm at.
That's full circle. You just jinx yourself, right?
Yep.
I think you brought up a really important topic, and you didn't even say the word, but continuing education. You have to evolve. You have to adapt. I think that's really, open-mindedness that you saw how this sports and health and wellness was really kind of an opening spot, sweet spot that no one was kind of gravitating towards. What are some advice of continuing education? Because you will quickly in this day and age fall behind if you don't continue to shift and continue to change and kind of study and read up on what's going to happen next in my field.
So I think when you look at that at face value, it can seem a little overwhelming.
Yeah, it does.
And that's not what I would want for anyone. What I would advocate is find the areas of whatever you're in that you just find interesting and that you're just curious about. Because curiosity, I think, is one of the best traits any entrepreneur can have. So, a big topic right now is AI's impact on creative services, and will AI, disrupt creative services and how they're delivered, how they're sold, how they're marketed, et cetera. Yeah, it will. Am I worried about it? No, I'm really not. Because I'll figure something out in that mix that I love to do, that really jazzes me up and really excites me, that I'm going to be able to pour myself into. Okay. So I think it's having that curiosity that you can explore with kind of that great enthusiasm. So like early in my career, it was studying digital marketing. I was so curious about digital marketing. And anytime a new book would come out, I would absolutely devour it. And I would sign up for courses and go to conferences and hire coaches just to download and digest all this information. Now, does that stuff interest me as much now? No. But I have other things now that I am investing myself into that I do find really curious, and it allows me to have that fun with the creativity as well. So I think curiosity is what I would say. Be curious, and you'll find things that you want to invest your time and energy into. And then it doesn't seem as daunting as a process of, I always have to be on the cutting edge of whatever it is, because that can wear you out, that sort of mindset.
It almost like discourages you, right? Like, in that sense, because I have definitely felt that, where it's like, what do I need to do? And then I'll sit down and then I just become overwhelmed, right? One thing at a time. I've learned one article at a time. Don't have 5 different things opened up on my tabs, because then it's just like, oh my gosh, where do I start? What do I do? How is this related to the next one? Right. And then I consume nothing at that point except anxiety that I brought on myself. Sounds like it's follow your gut is kind of what I was hearing. Like, follow your gut. What's interesting you, go down that path, and things will kind of open your eyes to see that.
And this kind of relates back to, we've talked a lot about differentiation. Something's only going to work if you like doing it, right? If I don't like doing something, it doesn't matter how good I am at doing it, I'm not going to do it successfully. I think the perfect focus for anything of what we're doing is to find an overlap. If you were to make a list of all the things you love doing and make a list of all the things you're good at doing, it's finding first where those two overlap. So for example, I'm like weirdly good at math and statistics. And I tested out of all my math classes in college. So it's something I'm really good at. Okay. It really bores me.
Yeah, it bores me too, and I'm not good at it.
Like my father's a financial analyst and financial planner, and he wanted me to step in and take over his business. It's like, it might as well be doused in chloroform for all intents and purposes. So not a good focus for me, right? Another example, the tech of the photo industry bores the hell out of me.
Interesting.
I don't care about gear. I don't care about, I'm one of the least technical photographers that I could think of. I kind of feel my way or see my way through how I craft and create imagery. The whole specifics, that kind of bores me. So it's finding what you love, what you're good at, where that overlaps. And then the third thing in this Venn diagram is what people want from you. So it's a combination of what you love, what you're good at, and what people need. That's a good place to focus.
Okay. Like digesting it and thinking about my Venn diagram myself in my head right now. Okay. I like that. Simplicity is really where it's at. You're a published author. Talk about some of the books. Talk about this new legacy planner that you've come out with. We have a link in the description of this episode for everyone, because it really is visualizing, writing down, getting things out to make things happen is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that was the earliest childhood idea, was I want to be an author.
Oh, okay.
Before, and I think that's why I chose journalism.
Yeah.
Was, you're creating bylines for yourself. So the first book I wrote was a marketing book for health and fitness professionals. What the heck did I call that thing? Fit Business Guide.
I love it.
It's on the bookcase over there. And that one, we were very fortunate in that we did a successful marketing campaign with that. That did become a bestseller on Amazon. The second book was called Fit Business Online. It was kind of like a sequel, but it blended more into this workbook idea. And we created a 10-part video masterclass that coincided with the workbook. And the idea was to build a business from zero and build it to scale over the course of a couple months. So that was the idea of Fit Business Online. The third book was, let's lean into this idea of a workbook even further. I had cultivated this approach to goal planning, and I did it in an Excel document, back in, right out of college. I'm thinking 2006, 2007. And I had just had this Excel document where I tracked all my goals. And the reason this worked was because I was required to open up the Excel document multiple times a year. Okay. Contrast that to, let's say I write a marketing plan. I write a marketing plan, I print it out, even put it in a binder, and it goes on a shelf. Yeah. And the next time I look at it is next year when I take it off the shelf and I go to see, well, did I even hit any of these? I don't even remember writing down half of these.
Like your New Year's resolutions, right? They're just...
Bingo. The Excel document lived on my desktop, so I opened it often. Okay. And I created different columns of, one column was all the goals I was setting for myself, but the other columns were check-in columns that I was doing quarterly. Let's check in. Am I on track or am I off track to achieve any of these goals? And if I'm on track, great, keep doing it. And if I'm off track, what do I need to address in my approach in order to get back on track to hit some of these goals? And I found I was getting almost all my goals done. Like I would set 100, 120 goals throughout the year, and I was having an 80 to 90% success rate on most of these goals. And they were hard goals that I was setting for myself. So I was like, well, I want to just continue the system. So I just want this to be a daily thing now. Like, how much can I drill this down from annual goals to quarterly plans? Can I drill this down to daily? And I would literally just draw out in a planner my daily plans. And it was basically just taking my annual plans, breaking them down into quarterly plans, breaking those down into monthly plans, breaking those down into weekly plans, breaking those down into daily tasks.
Okay.
But it's a lot of time to literally, with a ruler every day.
Oh my gosh. See, this is where your math, excellency comes in with when you said Excel, it's like that's where
we had a lot of time in 2020. We had so much time. So I was like, well, let me just design this into a PDF, and I could just print it out. Like I could print out a whole week's at a time. So every Sunday I'd print out my week, which had, my week recap and then, a space for every day. And I was getting really into this. And I was like, well, why don't I just make it into a book? So I don't even have to print this out. I just have a book. So I made myself a book. And
goes back to your needs that you saw. And you're like, well, if I need this, somebody else does.
This was 100% self-serving. But some of my clients saw the book, and they asked, well, what is this? I'm like, well, this is what I do every day. Like, this is how I build out my routines, from my annual goals to my quarterlies, to my monthlies, to my weeklies, to my day. This is how I'm managing 10 companies. And they says, well, how do I get that? I'm like, you should have this. You should have this. So we said, all right, let's just test it. So we printed off 50, sent it to 50 of our clients. We tested it for a year. Based off their feedback, we then refined it and released it publicly, and that's the Legacy Planner. So the Legacy Planner is an annual planner where you build out your annual goals. It walks you through taking those annual goals, turning them into quarterly plans, into monthly lists, into weekly actions, and into every day your daily tasks. So it is your annual planner that guides you through the entire year.
Nice.
And it's what I use. Like, I know what I'm doing today because I've written it out in my daily planner.
Yeah. I can't live without a calendar or anything. If it's not written down, it doesn't happen. Like it really is non-existent.
It bridged that gap between me having just a manual thing I walked around with and that Excel sheet that I just had on my desktop.
Yeah.
Now I have it with me everywhere I go.
Let's talk about accountability when it comes to entrepreneurship, small business ownership, because you have accountability in every aspect of life. It's really something different when it's your business, your brand, your marketing. I read a great quote with this book I was reading last month, and it was like, even athletes, LeBron James still has a coach, and he's the best basketball player, at 38 years old. You need a coach too. Talk about the importance of coaching and accountability when it comes to growth in your business and yourself.
I think we go through these different seasons, depending on one, where we're at in our careers, but two, also what our goal sets are. I've been very aggressive when it comes to hiring coaches and working with different coaches, but coach, quote unquote, doesn't necessarily have to mean a business coach.
Right.
So, for example, right now, I don't have a business coach that I have a formal connection with. I have other entrepreneurs that I connect with. I have others who are running businesses who I can sit down and talk to and navigate things together. But I have a great therapist because I'm working, I'm a father and I'm a husband and I'm trying to build my personal life and the success I have in my personal life to mirror that what I've built professionally. So that's been my focus and energy. And it helps to have someone to bounce these ideas off of or bounce these challenges off of, whether it's a formal coach you're working with, mental health, or a partner that you have, or a colleague that you have. I'm also really good at holding myself accountable, and I've created systems and how I hold myself accountable on things. My legacy planner being one of those. Another one is, in my office, I have a KPI board, KPI, key performance indicators. There was about, if I look up on the board, it looks like about 18 or so different areas that I considered important that I needed to track. And it could be anything from the size of my email list, what I'm making, what my accounts receivable is, how many downloads my podcast has, how many subscribers we have on our email list, how many reviews we have on our Google profiles. And each of these have a goal. Okay. So every month I have to write where we're at related to our goal. They're key performance indicators. I had to see it every day. Because I come into 5 days a week. I come to my office 5 days a week. So 5 days a week, I'm looking at my key performance indicators and seeing, am I on track or am I off track? So it's a constant reminder. If I'm off track on something, we need to address something in our workflow in order to get back on track. And, I have a great team as well. And when we're on our team calls, we look at things like, how are our email open rates going? How are magazine sales doing? How did the book launch go? How are podcast downloads going? What is our website traffic like? And through any of these, unless you have the data, you can't make any right decisions. But having the data, having the numbers, even if they're not favorable, like I don't like looking at my financial numbers. It gives me hives.
I know. I have a financial meeting after you and I'm dreading it, James.
it's not fun.
It's not
even
fun.
When you're successful, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Because you're so worried something's not going to look right.
Yeah.
But that's right there. You're so worried something's not going to be right. But if you don't know it's not right, it could get a hell of a lot worse.
There. Yeah.
And so that's why it's important to look at it, to see not only what's not working, but what's working.
Yeah.
What's doing well. Like, oh my God, this one article crushed it. Why did this article crush it? Why did we have such great traffic on this article? Let's reverse engineer that. And it's how we learn and how we improve over time.
Let's talk about starting those procedures and policies. I've talked to, we've had Cynthia Stassi on, who is a mutual friend of ours. I've had Alan Draper on. They all say, and you've all said the same thing. It's make sure you have your policies and procedures set up, start tracking your data so you can see the growth and see that. I am guilty of this. I didn't really start everything perfectly right when I started my two businesses. I've had to change things along the way. but it's important to start at some point. So when you start now. What are some things that you recommend? Because then I could it goes back to what I just said, getting overwhelmed of learning something. It's like, oh my gosh, where do I start? What data? How do I do it? I'm already behind. But if you don't start now, then you're going to get even further behind.
So there's this misconception that there's a perfect formula for this. And I think the quest for the perfect formula is what prevents us from even getting started.
Yes.
Like if I only find the perfect template, I'm just going to Google KPI templates. I need to find and I lose a day, 2 days, trying to find the perfect template. And I never even get started. Right.
And you don't use any of the ones you found, by the way. You create your own.
Of course not. Like I have 10 different draft house budgets on my hard drive right now. There is no static, and when I say static, use static in place of the word perfect approach to this, meaning once I establish it, it is done and it cannot be changed. We live in a dynamic world, meaning things can evolve and change over time. So this idea that we need to find something perfect, set in stone that we're carving right now is not the right approach. You know the things that are most important for you in this second. Yeah. We'll just write those down.
Okay.
Right? Don't worry about and write them in dry erase marker so you can erase it even if you don't like it. Mm-hmm. Like it's changeable. That's the thing. It's changeable. Maybe, for example, I'm going to track, let me look at one of the things up here. I'm going to track the number of speaking gigs I book throughout the year. Oh, okay. And at some point I decide this isn't important to me. Okay, erase it. And it's getting over that. Yeah. Well, but I've been tracking it. Why do I erase it? Because you don't need it anymore. You didn't need it. And the only way to realize you didn't need it is to try it and realize, I don't need this. This is not important to me.
And it's not a failure when you do that either. I think that's another mindset you have to remind yourself is, because I've been guilty of that too. It's like, it didn't work. Oh my gosh, I failed. It's like, it wasn't a failure. You tried something and it led you to try something else that you saw a different opening of what was needed. Kind of back to the very first thing we talked about is finding your path.
100%. Like I'm able to look at, my legacy planner. I'm so proud of what this looks like. For 10 years, this was an Excel sheet.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the system. That's the other part of this. The Excel sheet worked for me for a decade.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I wanted to evolve it that I changed it.
That's right? Huge. Yeah.
You can just write it in a comp book. I just like my notes in my comp book. I'm good on that. If I can just look at my comp book, I'm good. Right?
Yeah.
So get over this idea of perfection, get over this idea of this static system that you need to construct, because you'll just lose all. And unfortunately, I have clients who get stuck with that in the systems process. Well, what's the perfect project management system? Whatever one you're using.
Yeah.
What's the perfect web builder? Yeah. Whatever one you're using.
Yeah.
We tested out a project. We just signed up for 2. Like we needed a new system, signed up for 2 that had free week trials, tested them both out for 7 days, decided, well, neither's perfect, but this one's a little better. Let's just use this one. Done. Decision over. Does it have everything we need? No. Doesn't have everything we need. Could it be better? You bet. How long are we going to use it till we find something better?
Yeah.
We're not actively looking. We're using it. It's being used. Until you start using something, you have no idea.
That's true.
Like what you don't like. You don't have any feedback on it. So, I write my KPIs on a whiteboard. That's fine. Works for me, right? We have a project management system through one software platform. It's fine. It's fine until it's not. And then we make a change.
My very first job I ever had was at Fox Sports. I was in Fox Sports Atlanta, so we were the Southeast territory. And I was in charge at one point of 24 different shows that were being produced and edited. And I was working with each editor for their own needs, and each one had like 4 shows and it was divided up, and I was going back and forth from the production house to headquarters. And they used to make fun of me. They're like, oh, here comes Alicia with her yellow pad, because I would just write every to-do list down, every little dot. It's like, I need this shot of footage of this player, and I'd write it down. And it felt so good at the end of the day when I had like marks, going down that yellow pad. But it's like, I never walked anywhere without my yellow pad. For me, it was comfort because I don't have to remember remember it. It's written down. It's right here in front of me. And now my brain can relax because I don't have to worry about what was it I was supposed to go get for that one editor, right? And so they were kind of laughing at me. And I was like, right, but you got everything you want. And they're like, yeah, I did, It works for me. I'm like you. I need to write things down. I've tried doing stuff on my phone with a tally list. I've tried carrying around a big note. It's like, it doesn't work for me. That's not how my brain works. And I need to get back to what works for me as I'm talking to you. I'm like, I'm not writing enough stuff down. And I see how this is it's hurting me. It's not helping me grow at this point because of that.
And there's no difference in the quality versus writing things on a legal pad versus a journal versus a digital. If you're using it and if it works for you, move on.
Right.
You're good. Stop thinking about it.
Exactly.
Because I'll spend forever trying to find the perfect CRM and the perfect email deliverability software and whatever. Just use if it worked. I don't often one of my resolutions this year was to stop fighting with people online.
It's a good one. How's it going for you?
It is a good one because, in 20 years of fighting with people online, I've never changed one person's opinion about anything. But there was one thing I just couldn't help myself with. It was, I think back when I was in high school, I had this really great math teacher actually, where one of our classmates asked a really dumb question. And I think I cut her off to say, that's a dumb question. I would really reconsider asking that question. And she protested, there's no such thing as dumb questions. Isn't that right, teacher? I don't remember the teacher's name. And the teacher said, yeah, that's right. There's no such thing as dumb questions, just dumb people. Whoops. Okay. So I'm in lots of Facebook groups. I could really
go two ways really with that comment.
Yeah. So I'm in all these Facebook groups because I like to see what's going on within industries or within communities. And I like to offer advice or help whenever possible. But it is amazing how many dumb questions are popping up in Facebook groups. Mm-hmm. A question popped up that said, I'm trying to reorganize my office to create the most productive layout possible.
Okay.
Because I need to make money this year. Where is the best place to put my desk for maximum profitability?
That's an opinion question.
And I responded, typically right in front of where you sit.
This is why we get along, James.
My problem with this question now, and I understand the intention was asking about feng shui and creating the right energy, which I am all for. Hey, knock yourself out, have a blast with it. But if you are not working, if you are not actually putting something together because you're spending all this time gathering subjective opinions about something, and it's the same time when people ask questions like, I'm trying to pick the right web host. What's the best, quote unquote, the best web host? I'm trying to pick the right camera. What's the best camera out there? It doesn't matter. Whichever one you buy is the camera that's best. Mm-hmm. That's the one. Use that one. It's a way to prevent actually getting into the work.
Yes, it's procrastination.
It's a stall
excuses.
tactic.
Yeah. I'm guilty of it 100%.
I'm not going to start writing on this book I wanted to write until I've organized my office the most appropriate way. And fortunately, the original poster got that I was kind of having a little fun with her. She wasn't offended, thankfully, and thus no fight ensued. But the only reason I got my books done was because I put time in my calendar that this is writing time.
Yeah.
And thus clients couldn't book me during that time. I couldn't do anything else. It was in my calendar. This is writing time. And from whenever I started to whenever that time ended, I wrote. And sometimes it was terrible and it was awful, but I was writing.
Let's talk about that because I have tried that. It goes back to self-accountability. And it's I would block out 20 minutes of being on LinkedIn, right? Because I kind of you can go down the rabbit hole or you don't even start what was my thing. And the next thing I know, it's oh, wait, well, this led me to this and this led me to this. You really just have to ignore it and stick to, I'm writing for this hour and nothing else. I'm not answering emails, put everything away and just focus on this. And that's self-control, a lot of it too.
You got to know what your distractions are. I used to get distracted by email. Like, so I'd be writing. I'd hear the email chime in and I'd turn over, look at my other monitor. And now I'm 20 minutes on this other task and and I've lost this.
Right.
So what I used to do is I used to unplug my internet. And that's how I was able to write. I can't check my email if the internet's unplugged. I have to physically plug it back in. I would literally unplug the router. And that worked for me. Another thing was shifting my environment. I would go to coffee shops and I just felt I wasn't more creative at a coffee shop, but because I'm around a bunch of people working, it created an energy in me that I wanted to do the same. And maybe I don't want to be distracted by social media. Maybe I just want to be, punching away on my laptop right now. So we all know kind of what our distractions are. And we just need to find ways that we're eliminating those, that we are able to kind of put those blinders on to focus on this task.
I could go on and talk to you forever, James. I love connecting with you and what you do. So a piece of advice, a simple piece of advice. What do we do to get started?
I mean, really, a business is something to sell, a way to give it to them, and a way to take money. Like, that's it. You want to boil down a business to, like, I want to sell this book. I need a way to give it to them. Email. I need a way to take the money. PayPal. Done. You have a business. Like, we're overcomplicating things. So much that it's preventing us from getting started. I was thinking about my first digital product was an ebook, actually, that launched 2 years later than I should have launched it. 2 years, because I was trying to perfect it. I was trying to get it right. I was trying to find the right whatever. And when I did finally launch it, it sold so well. But what I realized was I was 2 years late in sales. Those 2 years of revenue I could have been making, of feedback I could have been getting, of all these things that could have happened to have improved the situation. And that was a story that ended up in the positive. I was working on this other book back in my marketing job. I had this great idea and I'd work on it for a little bit and I'd put it up on the shelf and I'll get to this later, I'd take it down, work on it a little bit. Eventually the book came out, hit my desk. Here's the problem though. My name wasn't on it. Mine was still in draft form on my shelf. Had been for the last few years. I never finished it. Someone else came up with the idea and they wrote the book and it became a bestseller.
Ouch.
That's the downside. That's the downside of not getting started. So, that's what we think about. And in regards to how to grow it or how to scale it, I'll share with you what was shared with me. And it's been at the pinnacle of every marketing campaign I've ever done. I had, when I worked in marketing, my VP popped his head into my office, asked how my photography career was going. And he was one of the most brilliant minds I had ever met when it came to sales, marketing, client management, et cetera. So I was ready. It's like, yeah, give me some advice. Yeah. He says, all right, here's what you need to do. And he only said 6 words. Be seen, be heard, be read. Okay. That was it. And he left. And I was like, well, I have a lot more space on my page that I could have filled out. But what he hit on was the cornerstone of omnipotent marketing. We need to get in front of our audience where they already are. We need to be seen by them. We need to be heard by them. We need to be read by them. And those latter two mean we're delivering value to them. We're getting in front of where they are and adding value to what they are trying to do, to alleviate their problems, to solve their issues, to help them create their goals, help them reach their aspirational identity. Get in front of your clients where they already are, not expecting them to find you. Go to where they are and deliver value to them there.
I love it. You have a bunch of value. Go check out jamespatrick.com, listen to his podcast, read his book, get your planner, reach out to him. He's always available. He loves helping people grow and learn. Go check out his Fitposium, Recon, and everything else is coming up here in May, right?
Yeah. Get Published Live happens in May. May 16th through 19th in Phoenix.
Perfect. All right. We'll put the link of that description in the description of this episode as well. Check out the YouTube video. You can find us on Instagram, social media, Facebook, and TikTok. Everywhere we're at. Everywhere that my listeners are at, just like James said. Find us. James, thank you so much. One last question before we leave. It helps me learn more about our city. What is your favorite Scottsdale vibe? What's your favorite thing about Scottsdale? Besides me, it's fine. Something else.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're Okay, so if I were to take you off the board, okay, I moved to the Valley from Tucson, and the reason I moved to the Valley from Tucson was because trying to build a career in Tucson's like a big small town.
Yeah.
It was hard to get in and build what I felt were effective relationships. And the thing that I appreciate so much about moving up here was how much opportunity is afforded to those willing to introduce themselves, to those willing to put forth some effort. It is a place of opportunity, and that is something I'm so excited about being here in the Valley.
I love that because I feel the same way. The people here really open up the doors and really help each other. Well, thank you, James, so much for taking the time to teach us and be with us. I look forward to seeing you in person soon. And everyone else, stay tuned. I'll have the calendar events coming up next. Buying a home can be scary and sometimes frustrating, but all of that can go away with the right realtor. And that's where Sean Shackleton with the Shackleton Group is here for you. Sean has over 25 years experience in real estate. She's here to get you what you want and won't settle for less. She's experienced, knowledgeable, and understands this market, which these days is always changing. Take the stress out of your next home purchase by calling Sean at 480-734-7277. You can also find her at theshackletongroup.com. Don't forget to go check out jamespatrick.com to learn more about what he can offer you, what he's doing for environment, get his legacy planning coach, and get going. Don't make excuses, just do it. Of course, there is some more coming up. It is spring break this week, so enjoy the free roads as everyone is out with their family on vacations, staycations. Spring training is still going on, so expect a big crowd at those games. That's always the biggest week, I feel like. I know I plan on being out there for my birthday yesterday, so we had a great time with my family. So go check out some games that's going on. Movie night at Biltmore Fashion Square is happening this month, every Friday night starting at 7 p.m. on the center lawn. Bring a blanket, pick up dinner from a nearby restaurant, enjoy a beautiful night with family, friends, or a date maybe, and then get a movie out of it too. Phoenix Pride, the Rainbow Festival, is happening this weekend at Heritage Square Park. It is a free family event. There'll be main stage events. There'll be concerts. There's stuff going on all day, food trucks, drinks, fun. It's happening March 23rd through the 25th. So go check it out and support your local community. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. Give us a rate. Reach out. Let me hear what you want to see more of, less of, what interests you, or give me a great guest, maybe even yourself. So don't forget to subscribe and like this post, as well as on our social media. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can watch the YouTube video of this interview as well. And don't forget to check out Scottsdale City Lifestyle, where all of our local businesses and editorial content is all about Scottsdale. Have a wonderful week. Keep vibing, and I'll see you around town.